It's a difficult time when you realize a senior can't stay at home anymore. But choosing a senior living community for a loved one to move to makes it so much harder. With so many choices, how do you make sure you make the right decision in this important process? Gracie Nebel can help. She's the Vice President of Operations and Sales and Marketing at Melody Living, a senior living community, and she's willing to reveal her insider tips she's learned through the years to help you with this difficult time. What metrics are important? What questions should you ask? And to whom should you ask them? Listen as Gracie explains what you need to know to start your research so you can find a loved one their new home.
Hi, it's Jeff Hoyt, Editor-in-Chief of SeniorLiving.Org, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Gracie Nebel. Gracie is the Vice President of Operations and Sales and Marketing at Melody Living. It's a senior living community with assisted living and memory care locations in Colorado and Illinois. Welcome, Gracie. Thanks for taking the time.
Jeff, hi, thanks. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
I figure with your experience in the business, you've got some insider tips. There are people today who've decided a loved one, a parent, grandparent, that they can't stay aging in place. They can't stay in their own home anymore. And it's time to find them a new place to live that's going to take care of their needs as a senior. So what tips can you share as people start their search, start their journey to find a new place for a loved one to live?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fortunately, in this day and age, there's so much information accessible through the internet. So I definitely recommend starting there. A lot of people, depending on where you live geographically, doing a search if you want to keep them within your space, or if you're looking, maybe you live in Florida and they live in California, and so you need to find a community in California because that's what they want to stay. So the beginning search could be just, senior living communities or assisted living communities near me or near, certain area in California or what have you. But that will then generate an initial list of providers that have a community in the area. And so that's where you begin. Honestly, just kind of make a list, see what comes up. And then I would look into each individual community, meaning you can, Google. Everybody usually has a Google My Business. So you go there, there's a rating that each community typically has. It's based on individuals who have either, they themselves have lived there and provided feedback, or their family members have done so. They go in, they can rate them based on their experience. Some of them write a review. And so I definitely recommend starting off there. Because that can create your initial list of where you want to go further, meaning where do you want to actually begin your tour process. And I would say, it can be an extremely overwhelming process, Jeff, because there are so many providers. And so each one has something different that they may be focused on. And so it's important to also identify what's important to the future resident, what's important to the family. So maybe even creating a list of, it's important to mom that they have a great dining experience. It's important to mom that they have a garden area because that's been such a big part of her life. So all those things are really important, and you don't want that to end because they move into an assisted living or memory care community. So that's an important part of the search as well. Is first you want to make sure you know what you're looking for. And then as you start, you create your list of communities that you're going to go look at. You want to, again, like I said, do the research, go on their Google page, see what people have to say that have stayed there. Make note of great reviews, make note of not so great reviews. Go on their website, take a look at what they showcase in their community, what amenities they have to offer, what's included in the monthly rate and what's not included. And again, how does that align with your budget? Then you want to take a look at even social media venues to check out the communities, because you can really get a good picture of the day-to-day life in the community by looking at their social media pages, whether it's Instagram or Facebook. Check to see how happy do the residents look, how much are they posting And are they, do they have a garden club? Do they post about that? Do they have a great dining experience? Are they bringing entertainers in? So like I said, you can really get pretty good picture of the day-to-day life in the communities through their social media pages. So I strongly recommend that as well. So that I would say is a good starting off point to the pre-tour research component of the search for the families.
Great. Well, that's a lot right there. So if I'm thinking about going to a restaurant, I'm going to read negative reviews, auto body shop, everywhere there's going to be negative reviews. So if I were to reach out to the facilities, is it okay to bring up these negative reviews and get their take on it?
Absolutely. And that's, I think, something I really want to stress too. Great point, Jeff, because don't be afraid to ask those questions. This is a big decision for your loved one and for you. And hopefully it's going to be a long-term decision. And so you don't want to, short yourself with gaining that knowledge. And I think what's important is everybody, like you said, really, there's going to be, bad reviews, or maybe somebody just didn't have a great experience. And I think how the community responds to that is important. I think it's it tells a story, because as hard as every community tries to, to be perfect, the reality is, sometimes you just have a bad day, or sometimes things you just weren't able to execute for some reason. How you own that or not own that, to me tells a lot. Because if a community, somehow didn't meet somebody's expectations, and they know that, and they're aware of it, I would expect them to own that and say, yes, absolutely, we remember that situation. You don't have to get into details, but you can own it and still explain, we worked really hard, or, this is what happened, and we did our best to correct the situation. Unfortunately, we weren't able to achieve that, or whatever the situation may be. But I think that the community that takes on the responsibility and ownership of that situation, and doesn't try to make it sound like, oh, they were a crazy family or whatever, to me, that speaks to their integrity. And that's important. When you're choosing a senior living community, you want to make sure that the ownership group, that the management company, that the day-to-day leadership team of the community has a high level of integrity, because you want to be able to trust them. It's such a huge jump and leap of faith when you place your loved one in a community, that first part, that trust, is a beginning step to the relationship that you can anticipate to have with the leadership team of the community. So definitely you want to ask the question, and you want to see how they respond to that.
Right. And obviously there's certain things that you're more worried about a negative review than others. If they said the TV broke in the common room is one thing, but if it involves care of the people there, that would be much more of a red flag that you'd want to investigate.
Exactly. And because assisted living communities are required to have a license to operate, you can typically go to if you see something, like you said, that's a really big red flag, then you have at your fingertips, going through the health department or the licensing agency for that community, that state, you can find a record of their last, survey that the health department conducted. And if there was a lot more red flags, or something significant comes up, then maybe that's not a place that you want to put on your list to go tour. So once again, a great point to say, if it's something that's care related, to your point, is different than, we had a bad meal when mom was there. So yeah, those are things you can definitely dig more into by utilizing the health department resources that are accessible.
Should it be a matter of routine that every time you find a place that you're interested in, you can look at the name under the state licensing board, hopefully the records are online, and see how many official complaints have been lodged there, as opposed to just, Google reviews?
Yeah, again, because it's there's so many that are out there now, providers that are out there. It's definitely, again, a good peace of mind research piece to look into, because again, all those records are public records. So anybody should be able to access them. And actually, the community should, if you asked for it, the community should be able to provide you a copy of or to be able to look at anyways, the most recent survey that they had, or any, if there have been any complaint surveys, what they were on, and any resolutions to it. So that's definitely public record. And it lends to that trust factor.
Right. So we've been discussing questions to ask of the facility, but if I find a certain facility, it's like, who do I ask questions to? Do I pick up the phone and ask for the head of sales, or can I sometimes do it online? What's the best way to start the inquiry going?
Well, there's a couple of things. Most communities, or most entities these days, do have a way to start a chat online. So a big part of it can kind of depend on your personal schedule, meaning if you're trying to do this search in the middle of other things you have going on in your life, then sometimes starting off with that online chat can help you narrow down some choices as well. But if you have, maybe you took the time, you say, okay, I'm going to use the next 2 to 3 days to do my research, then I strongly recommend calling out to the community and asking to speak to their sales representative. And then at that point, ask maybe some initial questions about, what are some starting rates, what's their availability, and then, scheduling a time to come in and actually tour the community.
Are you better off talking to people at the facilities to get the answers to your questions, or using email and communicating in writing so you have a written record that you can go back to and see who answered which question with which answer?
Yeah, actually, probably a combination of both of those, Jeff, because you're right. There's so much information that's going to be coming at you as you're doing your research, and you want to be able to go back and reference that information. We've actually even created a tool for families for that very reason, so that you can really look at an apples to apples comparison. What aligns with your budget, what aligns with the services and amenities that are being provided for the monthly fee. And so we created a tool that outlines everything our communities offer, but then it actually has a place for 2 or 3 other communities, because you should most definitely tour more than one community, and even choose, because you want to make sure, again, you make the right decision. And you want to be able to compare what's being shared with you in regards to information. So that's what this tool actually does. Gives you the opportunity to look at our community in this case, and then write down if those same amenities or any additional amenities are being offered by the other 2 or 3 communities that you tour. And that way you have it all in one page from a comparison standpoint. But I do also strongly recommend, that follow-up email to the sales director or whoever you connected with at the community, just to confirm, kind of memorialize the conversation, just write back. I want to make sure I captured everything you said accurately. Mom liked studio apartment. This is the rate that you quoted. That rate is good through, the end of the month. These are the amenities that are included. This is the care level my mom's going to be at. So following up with a written email to the individual you spoke with or met with to, again, memorialize the conversation is always a great idea. That way you have a point of reference to go back to. Plus, if you happen to have siblings out of state or who weren't able to be a part of the tour process, you can share that information. And same thing, they can print it out, they can take a look at it, and it can be a truly apples to apples comparison.
And then when should you start getting concerned with pricing, which is obviously something that everyone has to deal with?
Well, that might be something that's part of that first research level as well. When you start making the calls to the communities to set up tours, I think it's important to specify that, like what your budget range is for your parent, what they'll be able to afford on a monthly basis, what's included in that monthly rent, because everybody's a little bit different. Some services are included in the monthly rent fees, like cable TV, all the utilities, weekly housekeeping or laundry services. But not everybody does. So that's what I'm saying. It's a little bit different. And so it is important to ask those things, because last thing you want is to think that certain services are included and then you move into the community and you find that there's some additional costs that you weren't anticipating, and it can have a big ramification on the budget that your loved one is able to afford. And then of course there's the care component as well. Again, everybody has different methods of assessing the care needs that senior might have, and how that breaks down into additional costs for care services. So it's important to ask those questions as well, like where would my parent be right now from a care perspective based on the support services they need? What would drive an increase in a care level for my parent? And so again, it really helps to, from that financial standpoint of knowing what to anticipate, and if you're aware of your loved one's finances, how long they would be able to maintain residency in that community.
Great. I like the idea of not just saying, hey, at this current state, with day one, what's going to cost, but anticipating future needs and how that's going to affect the budget as well.
Right. I would even, it might even be good if somebody doesn't have a financial planner. That's always a good step too, because helping, of course, along with the parent or the grandparent, and those can be difficult conversations when you start getting into personal finances, but it really is such an important part of finding the right community. Because the last thing you want, like I said, is to get into a community and 2 or 3 months down the road, and you find out that maybe the finances aren't what you thought they were, and then you have to go through the whole process again of finding another community that might be more in line with the budget of your, again, parent or grandparent. So a lot of times, a financial planner can be that person that the parent or grandparent can have that conversation with and share, like, this is our retirement funds or whatever resources they might have to draw funds from. Uh, Again, sometimes it can be a difficult conversation for a parent and an adult child to have. So it can be a good resource to have a financial planner, or even an elder law attorney can help with that as well.
And for people with lesser means who may need outside support, whether it's Medicaid or maybe there's some long-term care insurance, things like that, that should also be involved in the financial discussions with potential living facilities.
Absolutely. And some states have assisted living communities that can be funded through Medicaid programs. So absolutely, it's important to know, that's a good first starting point, is to find out financially what the capabilities are, and where your search should lead. If right off the bat, that financial assistance is going to be necessary through Medicaid, then same thing. Then you can research through the state health department of communities that are licensed to accept Medicaid as a support payment. And so then that can narrow down your search as well.
So you mentioned having interest, that you want to make sure if mom's into gardening that they have gardening there. Many people are spiritual and they may follow a certain religion, and they want to, make sure there's service. They go to services every week and they want to make sure that's available to them. Is it okay? Is it politically correct? Can you ask about religious services and things like that when you're trying to narrow down a senior living facility?
Absolutely, because again, it is one of those things. The resident's life shouldn't change significantly. What's important to them shouldn't change significantly because they move into a community. There's communities out there that some are faith-based and some are not, but they do still offer religious services for the different, denominations that are out there. And so it is important to ask that, whether they are able to host them on site or provide virtual services, or even if they provide transportation to local churches. That's perfectly okay to ask. And again, if it's a significant part of the resident's life, I would most definitely make sure to focus on that as well.
I'm a numbers person. So are there any metrics you should look into? In other words, if a place has a lot of availability, does that mean they're lower quality than a place that has a waiting list? Or is there a ratio of nurses to patients that one should investigate? Are there any metrics that one should try to, contrast and compare?
Well, a lot of occupancy, there can be some, definitely some red flags to that. How long has the community been open? Maybe it's a newer community and they're just ramping up their occupancy. So that's a question to ask is, how long have you been open? And I would ask the question, what's your current occupancy? How much availability do you have? Because you're right, that's a telltale sign. Um, and a lot of times when you go in, to tour the community and you're looking, definitely be cognizant of what you see, but it is okay to ask that question of like, well, so and so community down the street seems to have fewer availability than you do. What might be a reason for that? I think it's okay to again ask those questions because you want to see how they respond. But then also to your question about staffing metrics, that is definitely a question you want to ask also because you always want to make sure there is enough staff to meet not only the needs of your loved one, but of the other residents in the community as well. And, everybody does it a little bit different. Some are based on, how many residents that you have. And so they may have a set ratio of, like maybe one resident or one care staff for every 15 residents. And you want to ask what their staffing ratios are. And I would also even go to the next level of asking why that's their staffing pattern, because you want to know if it's strictly based on like a 1 to 15, then a next question I would have was what if 10 of those residents have higher care needs than the other 5? How does that balance out? How do you make sure the care staff isn't getting burnt out? And so, something to look for is a community that is flexible in their staffing pattern, meaning if care needs are going to go up, most inevitably. And so you want to make sure that they have a plan for that. What's going to happen when a greater percentage of the resident population has higher care needs, then it's most likely going to take the care staff longer to provide that care. And so what happens to my mom who maybe doesn't need as much care or support? Is she going to have to be waiting longer? Or, just those are the questions that to ask of what drives their staffing pattern and what could drive a change to their staffing pattern to bring on more staff.
I hope you enjoyed hearing Gracie talk about starting a research to find your loved one a new home. In the second part of this interview, which will appear here, she'll share the best way to tour a senior living community and reveal her best tips. If you're thinking about moving a loved one because they need more care, well, you won't want to miss this.